Hello, guys. It's three Heavenly Kings again. However, Main is not here because he's sick. At least that's what he told us. And yeah, I'm just here with Gara. Say hello.
Yeah.
And yeah, today we're gonna be doing What If Deku had N, as the title said. And play the intro.
I've been thinking way out of my element. They was speaking of smoke, I'm inhaling it. But we know you a bitch and you terrible. She was eating my dick like an edible. I throw game to my niggas to bet them. They done gave me the cards and I'm setting them. Brody gave me the perks and I'm selling them. The boys gave you some time and you telling it. I'm still jigging this shit on the regular.
Alright, now go.
Welcome to What If Deku Had Nen. Now let's get into the story. When Deku was 4 years old, he and his mom went to the quirk doctor to see what his quirk is. When they arrived to the quirk doctor, the doctor did a fruit test on Deku and came back to him in Inko. He would say, "Your son has a very powerful quirk. We decided to call it Nen. He can use his natural life energy to strengthen himself and do other things." Deku would start crying tears of joy and say, "I can be just like All Might." After that, he and Inko would go to the park to tell his friends about his quirk. Time skipped to 11 years later. Bakugo and Deku would be in junior high, and the teacher would say, "We could fill out these career papers, but I already know you all want to be heroes." So everybody would start to use their quirks except for Bakugo and Deku. Bakugo would say, "None of you extras have a chance at becoming actual good heroes except for me and Ixuru." Deku would tell Bakugo to calm down, and not too long after school would end. A few days passed and it would be time for the UA entrance exam. Deku and Bakugo will walk to UA with each other talking about best friend things. Once they got there, Deku would trip on a rock and catch himself last second and get up. Bakugo would be dying with laughter as Deku would turn to his left to see a girl who would be no other than Uraraka. She would say, "I was just about to use my quirk on you so you won't fall, but I guess I don't have to." Deku would get really nervous and say a lot of mixed up words and then walk away with Bakugo. In the theory exam, Deku would do great since he would spend most of his time studying because he already has a good physical build. After that would be where the real challenge begins. It is time for the combat exam, and everyone was excited to see how they would do. As soon as the door started to open, Deku would dash out and send most of his net into his legs and arms, boost his speed, even surpassing Ida's speed for a second. He would dash into the back and start destroying robots. President Mike would say, "Go, follow that kid. There's no time to wait in real battles." Everyone would start doing their own thing, destroying robots. Now back to Deku. Deku would already have a lot of villain points and a few rescue points, but he wouldn't know about the rescue points. When the zero pointer comes out, he hears Uraraka scream for help. He would immediately start running in that direction and put all of his net in his legs and jump up. Then he would put it in his arms and punch the robot a lot of times and then flying and breaking it. He will land and then run to Uraraka, pick her up from under the rubble. After that, President Mike announces that it is over. A week would pass and he would get a letter saying he made it into UA. He would have his uniform as well. He would get first in combat exam and third in theory exam. He would get second place overall under Bakugo. I'm say Bakugo got first in the theory exam. The next day, first day of UA started, they would do the quirk application test to save time. Deku would get first on a whole exam because he had a lot of adrenaline running through his veins, which boosted him. After that, they would be dismissed. Tomorrow, after doing the normal classes, which would to be expected of a normal high school, All Might would burst through the doors and say that they would be doing a hero versus villain simulation. After they drew lots, it would say that Deku and Uraraka would go against Bakugo and Nita. Deku will walk in the building and tell Uraraka to find the bomb while it takes care of Bakugo. Bakugo will be making loud explosions to get to Deku. Once he reached him, they will start to fight. They will be on equal terms until Deku catches Bakugo by surprise and puts handshake on him. He will punch upwards, which would break the floor. Deku will do the same thing as a cannon, and the rest of the fights will go the same way.
Okay, so after the heroes versus villains, about a week later, they just be chilling. Then at the end of the day, before preparing to go home, Aizawa basically announced that there is going to be a field trip, and that they are going to be visiting the USJ, which most heroes have visited, just like during school and shit. And it's basically to help you control your quirk and know like what to do, know what to not do as a hero, all that shit. And so time skip to, let's say, a week later. Deku is just so basically they're all about to go onto the they all get out of their changing rooms and they start walking to the bus. And in this, Deku basically has this like what should his hero costume be?
I'll say it's a little like it was in canon, but instead of it being green, it will be black and white.
Alright. Alright, so they go into the van. They go into the truck. Bus. And they just be talking about asking how they awakened, all that shit. And so basically Todoroki would basically skip how he got his, and then they go on to Deku after asking everybody else. And so Deku basically tell them that his quirk is basically aura manipulation, but he just calls it in, and so does everybody else. And so he basically says that he can control his life energy / life force and make it into attacks and all other types of things. For example, he can use it to boost his strength, which he calls Ren. And there's all types of different ones. There's Hatsus, all that shit. And so they all being pretty intrigued. Yeah. So after that, they basically get to the USJ and they walk in. They talk to 13 for a few minutes, and then the doors will close and communication will stop. Aizawa would try to call UA, but there'll be no reception. Then all the villains will come out the portal, and they come out the portal, and they just be looking at Deku and all the other students, including Aizawa. So as they were just looking at their students, some of them would start walking down where little platform is to the ground. And once they got on the ground, basically they start getting separated. Well, the students would. And so they start fighting and everything. Deku would get teleported to ship with Suyu and Mineta, and there'd be villains on the ship and in the water. So Deku would try to think of a plan to get them out of the water so that they don't, get clapped by these fucking D-rank fucking villains, if there was a rank for villains. And so basically, Deku decided to do the same thing he did in canon, but instead, while they were jumping, he also gave Suyu a little bit of his nen by cloaking it around her so that she could jump further. So they had to get to land, and they just be helping people out, especially Deku. He just mostly just be using a rock, but he also be using paper and scissors. So basically time skip to when Aizawa is fighting Nomu. He basically get fucked up, and Shigaraki would be close to touching him. Deku would come barely shooting a paper using paper on the Nomu, which is send the Nomu a little bit back since it's not physical damage. So it really wouldn't. So yeah. since it's not physical damage, it would actually hurt the Nomu. So Deku would run up to the Nomu, and he used scissors, and he get a pretty decent cut into the Nomu, but it would slowly start regenerating, and Deku would notice that. So Deku would basically grab a ladder that Aizawa had in his pocket, and he'd basically burn a little bit of himself. And this is when he would make his first Hatsu. He basically started burning his hand, but not too much. And he basically turned on his Ren. He basically turned on his Nen as well. And so he'd basically just keep punching the Nomu with Ren, and then the Nomu would hit him, and he'd get sent flying. But he'd get up, and he'd be fine. But he would see the Nomu was really right in front of him since it dashed to him. And Deku would just put a whole bunch of Nen into his fist, and it would ignite on fire. And then once that happens, Deku basically used scissors one last time, hit the Nomu of where his dome was, which cracked it, and then punched the Nomu where his brain was, and that would end up killing the Nomu. And so all the villains would be discouraged since the Nomu's dead, and so was Shigaraki. So they try to escape, but the heroes would just get there since Ida got out. But before Shigaraki could get out, go into the portal, basically Deku would shoot. He would use He would use paper, and he would hit he'd hit Shigaraki right before Shigaraki got into the portal. So Shigaraki would have this just indent inside of his chest that was pretty large. And so after that happened, basically Kurogiri would basically immediately try to get all the main niggas into the portal, aka just him and Shigaraki. And All Might would come, and he started wrecking villains, and so would all the heroes, and that'd be the end of the USJ. So So a few hours later, they all be home, including Deku, and Deku would just be thinking about what happened at the sports festival. Not sports festival, but USJ, about how so many students got hurt. And so he'd just be thinking, and he'd just be training. And since he just unlocked his Hatsu just by using fire, which is an element, he basically tried to use his fan, and he tried to absorb it with Nen, so that he could use air attacks and shit. And he'd also do this with water and electricity. He'd be doing this with electricity by using a taser that he got recently as a birthday present from his dad from the US. And so he basically combined all these together into one, which he just called Chaos. And he also combined dirt with it as well. So yeah. So he basically called it Chaos. And he basically went outside. He went to this small forest that was right behind their house, or behind the neighborhood. And he went to the biggest rock that there was, and he put it into all of his fingers in his right hand. And then he basically tried to shoot off little projectiles at it. And as soon as one would hit, it would just start this huge explosion that would just be black, red, blue, fucking brown, and white, and all that, and all the whatever the color is of those elements and shit. So he'd just be surprised, and then when the others would hit trees around it, he noticed that there started to be a forest fire. So he basically used his wind to stop it, but he tried to use it. He'd use it in a controlled manner, to the point where it's not strengthening the fire. Instead, it's dimming it down. And so he'd also use a water fist. So yeah, that's not the forest fire, and he'd be surprised at the new technique he learned. And yeah, he'd just be training for the rest of the month that UA was closed for due to the USJ and all the shit that happened there. And sorry about this, but this is where we're going to end it off. I know it's short, but we hope you enjoyed. And goodbye. This is the Heavenly King, Nameless, or you could just call me Yasser. Push down me. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But yeah, that's all, and we will see you guys later. Peace.